The morning sun blazed across the tarmac of Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as Corporal Raina Ashford stepped off the transport vehicle, her gear bag slung carefully over one shoulder. The weight distribution felt familiar, comforting even, though she knew what waited inside would draw attention she'd rather avoid. The Advanced Marksmanship Course facility stretched before her, a collection of weathered buildings and distant rifle ranges shimmering in the California heat. She'd arrived 30 minutes early, a habit ingrained from years of competition shooting where preparation meant the difference between victory and failure. The other trainees wouldn't arrive for another half hour, giving her time to check in and set up without an audience. Or so she'd hoped. Master Gunnery Sergeant Dalton Kress emerged from the range office, his weathered face a map of 2 decades under the desert sun. His eyes locked onto her gear bag immediately, that particular weight and shape unmistakable to someone who'd spent his life around firearms. He walked toward her with the confident stride of a man who owned every inch of this facility. "Welcome to Advanced Marksmanship," Corporal Kress said, his tone already carrying an edge. "That's quite a bag you've got there. Let me guess, custom rig?" Raina set the bag down carefully, meeting his eyes with a level gaze. "Yes, master guns. Standard Barrett M82. Some personal modifications for long-range precision work." Kress's eyebrow lifted, and something that wasn't quite a smile crossed his face. "A Barrett. Must be nice having that kind of budget. Most of us work with what the Navy issues." The implication hung in the air between them, sharp as the edge of a crowbar. Raina had expected this, had prepared for it, but the sting of assumption still landed. She kept her expression neutral, professional. "I save for it, master guns. Competition winnings." "Competition," Kress repeated, drawing the word out like taffy. "Well, this isn't a competition range, Corporal. This is military marksmanship. Different world entirely." He gestured toward the office. "Check in with Chief Holt. He'll get you squared away. And Ashford? We judge shooters by their performance here, not their equipment." "Understood, master guns," she replied, though his tone suggested he'd already made his judgment. "Before we continue with Raina's story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've seen similar situations where someone was judged by their equipment rather than their skill." Inside the range office, Chief Warrant Officer Raymond Holt looked up from his paperwork, his expression considerably warmer than Kress's had been. His eyes fell on her gear bag, and something shifted in his face, recognition perhaps. "Morning, Corporal. You're early. I like that." "Force of habit, Chief," Raina said, setting her bag down with practiced care. Holt's gaze lingered on the bag. "That a Barrett I'm seeing?" "Yes, Chief. M82A1 with some customization." Holt nodded slowly, and Raina caught something in his expression, approval maybe, or curiosity. "Mind if I take a look?" "Professional interest." She unzipped the case, revealing the matte black length of the rifle. The customizations were immediately visible to a trained eye. Modified stock, upgraded optics mount, custom trigger group, hand-loaded ammunition secured in foam cutouts. Every modification served a specific purpose, fine-tuned over years of competitive shooting. Holt let out a low whistle. "This is serious equipment. You do your own modifications?" "Some of them. The trigger work I had done by a gunsmith out of Arizona. The stock work I did myself." "Competition shooter?" Holt asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. "Was," Raina said simply, "decided to put the skills to better use." Before Holt could respond, voices echoed from outside. The other trainees had begun to arrive. Raina caught the shift in Holt's expression, something protective crossing his weathered features. "Just a heads up, Corporal. Master Guns runs a tight ship here. Old school. He believes in fundamentals over equipment. Nothing personal, just his teaching style. I can handle it, Chief," Raina replied, though she understood what he wasn't saying. She'd faced more than just tough teaching. The next hour proved her right. As trainees filed into the range briefing room, Raina's Barrett case drew eyes like a magnet. Whispers spread through the assembled group, 20 advanced marksmanship students from various Navy specialties. She sat near the back, keeping her expression neutral as conversations flowed around her. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Teague, a broad-shouldered SEAL candidate with 3 ribbons on his chest, leaned toward his buddy and spoke just loud enough to carry. Check out the new girl setup. Somebody's daddy must work for Barrett. Laughter rippled through several nearby trainees. Reyna kept her eyes forward, jaw set. She'd heard variations of this her entire competitive career. The assumption that her equipment was bought rather than earned, that success came from privilege rather than skill. It never stopped stinging, but she'd learned not to show it. Seaman recruit Jade Kimura, one of only 3 other women in the course, glanced back at Reyna with something between sympathy and curiosity. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then seemed to think better of it, turning back to face forward as Master Gunnery Sergeant Kress entered the room. Kress stood at the front of the briefing room, his presence commanding immediate silence. His eyes swept across the assembled trainees, lingering for just a moment longer on Reyna before moving on. "Welcome to Advanced Marksmanship Qualification," he began, his voice carrying the authority of 2 decades in uniform. "You're here because you've demonstrated basic competency with a rifle." Basic competency. That means you can hit a target at standard ranges under ideal conditions. What we do here is different. He clicked a remote and a slide appeared on the screen behind him, showing a sniper in ghillie suit, barely visible against desert terrain. We train for adverse conditions. High wind, extreme range, moving targets, time pressure, equipment failure. You'll learn to make shots that matter when everything else has gone wrong. And you'll do it with discipline, fundamentals, and mental fortitude. Not fancy equipment. The emphasis on the last 2 words sent another ripple of glances toward Reyna. She kept her expression neutral, hands folded on the desk in front of her. Kress continued, pacing slowly across the front of the room. "I've been doing this for 20 years. I've trained SEALs, Marine Scout snipers, special operations personnel from every branch. You know what separates the ones who make it from the ones who wash out? It's not their gear. It's not their rifle. It's their mindset, their discipline, their willingness to master fundamentals until they're second nature." He paused, looking directly at Reyna now. "I've seen too many shooters who think expensive equipment is a substitute for skill, who believe a custom rifle will compensate for poor technique. It doesn't work that way. The weapon is just a tool. The shooter is what matters." Marcus Teague smirked, whispering something to the trainee next to him. More laughter, quickly stifled as Kress's glare swept the room. "Something funny, Petty Officer Teague?" "No, Master Guns," Teague replied, straightening in his seat. "Good, because there's nothing funny about what we do here. Every skill you learn in this course could save lives in the field. Your teammates, civilians, hostages. When a moment comes, you don't get a second chance. You don't get a do-over. You make the shot or people die." He let that sink in before continuing. "We start with qualification courses this afternoon. Standard Navy rifle, standard ammunition, standard optics. I want to see what you can actually do, not what your equipment can do for you." The implication was clear enough that even the slowest trainee understood who he was talking about. Jade Kimura shot another sympathetic glance at Reyna, but Reyna's expression remained unchanged. She'd faced worse than this. Championship competitions where male shooters refused to acknowledge her existence until she outshot them. Range officers who scrutinized her technique with microscopic intensity while giving male competitors casual approval. This was just another variation of the same old song. After the briefing, trainees filed out toward the armory to draw their qualification weapons. Reyna carried her Barrett case toward the secure storage area where personal weapons could be locked up during training exercises. Marcus Teague fell in a step beside her, his smile friendly enough on the surface, but carrying an edge underneath. "So, Ashford, right?" he said conversationally. "That's some serious hardware you've got there. Must have set you back, what, 15, 20,000? Something like that." Reyna replied evenly, not slowing her pace. "Nice. Real nice." Teague's tone suggested anything but admiration. "My dad's a machinist in Pittsburgh. Took him 2 years to save up for my sister's college tuition. But hey, different worlds, right?" The implication stung precisely because it was designed to. Reyna stopped, turning to face him directly. I worked for it, petty officer. Every piece of that rifle was earned through competition winnings and sponsorships. My parents are teachers in Vermont. I know about working for things. Teague's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. Competition shooting, right? Like video games versus actual combat. Sure, it translates, Corporal. Before Reyna could respond, Chief Holt's voice cut through the tension. Teague, shouldn't you be getting your weapon from the armory? We start qualifications in 30 minutes. On my way, Chief, Teague said, his friendly mask sliding back into place. He gave Reyna a mock salute and walked away, leaving her standing with Holt in the corridor. Holt waited until Teague was out of earshot before speaking. Don't let them get under your skin, Corporal. I've seen this before. New trainee shows up with better equipment than the old guard, and suddenly everyone's an expert on what makes a good shooter. I can handle it, Chief, Reyna said, though her jaw was tight. I'm sure you can, Holt replied. But here's some advice anyway. Master Guns isn't a bad instructor. He's actually one of the best. But he's old school, and he's got some blind spots. Prove yourself with their equipment first. Show him fundamentals. Then when you get your Barrett back, nobody can say it was the rifle doing the work. Reyna nodded slowly, understanding the wisdom in his words. Thanks, Chief. The afternoon qualification course was set up on Range 3, a sprawling complex of berms and target arrays stretching out to 800 meters. Standard Navy qualification only went to 500, but Kress had added longer distances to test the advanced trainees. Reyna drew her assigned weapon, a well-maintained but thoroughly standard M40A6, and moved to her designated firing position. The rifle felt light compared to her Barrett, the balance different, the trigger pull unfamiliar. She ran through her mental checklist anyway, the same process she'd used in hundreds of competitions. Breathing control, natural point of aim, trigger discipline, wind reading. The fundamentals Kress kept emphasizing were the same fundamentals she'd been perfecting since she was 16 years old. Shooters ready, Kress called from the tower overlooking the range. You have 30 seconds to engage each target as it appears. Targets will appear at ranges from 200 to 800 meters. You need to hit 8 out of 10 to qualify. Any questions? The range fell silent except for the whisper of wind across the berms and the distant cry of seabirds from the coast. Compensating. The first target popped up at 200 meters, an easy shot even with unfamiliar equipment. Reyna's round struck center mass before most of the other shooters had finished their breathing cycle. The second target appeared at 350 meters, quartering wind from the left. She compensated automatically, muscle memory and thousands of hours of practice guiding her hands. Another hit. By the fifth target, she was aware of Kress watching her through binoculars from the tower. By the eighth, several other trainees had finished their strings and were watching as well. The final two targets appeared at 700 and 800 meters respectively, testing the limits of the M40's effective range. Reyna steadied her breathing, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat through her fingertips on the stock. 700 meters with iron sights and standard optics was pushing the envelope, but it wasn't impossible. She read the wind flags downrange, noted the mirage patterns dancing above the hot sand berms, and made her corrections. The trigger brake was clean, the recoil familiar despite the different weapon. The target indicator flashed green. Hit. 800 meters. The final shot. The wind had shifted slightly, now coming from her right at approximately 8 miles per hour, gusting to 12. She waited for a lull, watching the flags, feeling the air currents against her face. The other trainees had gone quiet, watching. Even Teague had stopped his running commentary. The moment arrived, that brief window of relative calm between gusts. She pressed the trigger. The indicator flashed green. 10 for 10. Ceasefire, Kress announced from the tower. Make your weapons safe and stand by for results. Reyna cleared her rifle and stood, rolling her shoulders to release the tension that had built during the qualification string. Around her, other shooters were doing the same, some looking pleased with their performance, others frustrated. Jade Kimura caught her eye and offered a small smile of congratulation. Reyna nodded back, keeping her expression neutral. Kress descended from the tower with his clipboard, his boots crunching on the gravel as he walked the line of shooters. All right, listen up. Overall, decent performance. Most of you qualified, which is the minimum expectation. He paused, scanning his notes. Petty Officer Teague, 9 out of 10. Good shooting. Seaman Kimura, 8 out of 10. Solid work. He continued down the list, calling out names and scores. When he reached Reyna, he paused longer than necessary, looking from his clipboard to her face and back again. Corporal Ashford, 10 out of 10. The words hung in the air, and Reyna could feel the shift in attention. Every trainee now looking at her with varying degrees of surprise, respect, or in Teague's case, something darker. Kress continued without missing a beat. Perfect score on qualification. That's good. That's the standard I expect from everyone here. He emphasized the last part, making it clear that perfection was the baseline, not an achievement. But qualification is just the beginning. Tomorrow we start the real training. Distance work, stress conditions, unknown range targets. We'll see how those fundamentals hold up under pressure. The dismissal was clear, turning her perfect score into merely meeting expectations rather than exceeding them. Reyna understood the tactic. She'd seen it in competitions, instructors who couldn't acknowledge exceptional performance from someone who didn't fit their preconceptions. The solution was always the same. Keep performing until acknowledgement became unavoidable. After weapons were cleaned and returned to the armory, trainees headed to the mess hall for evening chow. Reyna found herself walking alongside Jade Kimura, who seemed determined to engage despite Reyna's preference for keeping to herself. That was incredible shooting, Jade said, her voice carrying genuine admiration. 800 meters with that wind? I barely qualified at that distance. Thank you, Reyna replied, trying to keep the conversation brief without being rude. How long have you been shooting? Jade persisted, undeterred by Reyna's reserved tone. Since I was 16. Started with my high school rifle team, then moved into competitive long range when I was 18. Jade's eyes widened. Wait, competitive shooting? Like, serious competition? Reyna hesitated, aware that the more she revealed, the more ammunition she'd provide for people like Teague to use against her. But Jade's interest seemed genuine, without the edge of judgment she'd encountered from others. Precision rifle series, mostly. Some international matches. That's amazing. So you really did earn that, Barrett. I mean, I figured, but some of the guys were saying she trailed off, looking embarrassed. Then my parents bought it for me, Reyna finished. I know what they're saying. It's fine. It's not fine, Jade said firmly. They're being jerks. Teague especially. He's got this whole thing about proving he's the best shooter here, and you just walked in and outshot him with a rifle you'd never fired before today. They reached the mess hall, and the conversation died as they entered. The facility was standard military issue, long tables with attached benches, serving line along one wall, and the smell of institutional cooking hanging in the air. Reyna grabbed a tray and moved through the line, selecting her meal with the same methodical efficiency she applied to everything else. She found a seat at a partially empty table near the back, hoping to eat quickly and return her barracks. Jade sat across from her, and for a few minutes they ate in companionable silence. Then Marcus Teague and 3 other male trainees approached, their trays loaded and their expressions carrying that particular mix of false friendliness and underlying hostility that Reyna had learned to recognize. Mind if we join you, ladies? Teague asked, already sliding onto the bench before either could answer. His companions followed suit, effectively surrounding Reyna and Jade. So, Ashford, Teague said conversationally, attacking his meatloaf with more force than necessary. Perfect score today. Pretty impressive for your first time with that rifle. Thank you, Reyna replied, keeping her eyes on her own food. Makes me wonder, though, Teague continued. You said you do competition shooting, right? How's that work exactly? You just show up at a range and shoot paper targets for prize money? One of his friends snorted. Sounds like a real high-pressure situation. Paper targets. Must be intense. Reyna set down her fork carefully, meeting Teague's eyes across the table. Precision rifle series competitions involve unknown distance targets, environmental variables, time pressure, and equipment challenges. Shooters compete over multiple days with cumulative scoring. It requires consistent performance under stress. But not, actual stress, fatigue-pressed. Not like combat. Not like someone shooting back. Not like lives depending on your shot. No, Reina admitted. Not like that. That's why I'm here. To learn how to apply competitive skills in a military context. Noble, Teague said, his tone making it clear he found it anything but. A lot of people join up to serve their country. You join up to put your hobby on your resume. The comment struck deeper than Reina wanted to admit, touching on her own occasional doubts about her motivations. Before she could formulate a response, Jade spoke up. That's not fair, Marcus. She qualified expert with a weapon she'd never fired before. How many of us can say that? Teague's smile hardened. I'm just saying, there's a difference between shooting for trophies and shooting to save your buddy's life. All the custom equipment in the world doesn't change that. Nobody's arguing otherwise. Another voice interrupted. Chief Warrant Officer Holt stood behind Teague, his dinner tray in hand, and his expression neutral but his eyes sharp. But I've seen Corporal Ashford's competition record. 5-time PRS champion. Youngest woman to win the Precision Division at Nationals. Multiple long-distance records. That kind of consistency requires more than just equipment. It requires discipline, focus, and thousands of hours of practice. Sounds like pretty good fundamentals to me. The table fell silent. Teague's jaw tightened, but he nodded respectfully. Yes, Chief. Holt looked at Reina. Mind if an old warrant officer sits with you, Corporal? Not at all, Chief, Reina said, grateful for the intervention even as she worried it might make things worse later. Holt settled onto the bench, and conversation gradually resumed, though notably more subdued. Teague and his friends finished their meals quickly and left without further comment. Jade excused herself shortly after, leaving Reina alone with Holt. You didn't have to do that, Chief, Reina said quietly. Holt shrugged, chewing thoughtfully. Didn't do it for you, Corporal. Did it because I hate seeing good sailors get hazed for the wrong reasons. Teague's a solid operator, but he's got an ego problem. Thinks being good means tearing others down. The second day of training began before dawn, the sky still dark as trainees assembled on Range 5. This range was different from the qualification course, sprawling across nearly 3 kilometers of varied terrain with targets hidden in the landscape. Unknown distance shooting, where the marksman had to estimate range, read environmental conditions, and make accurate first-round hits without the benefit of prior knowledge. Cress stood before them in the pre-dawn gloom, his silhouette backlit by the range lights. Today we start real marksmanship training, he announced. Unknown distance targets from 300 to 1,500 meters. You'll work in pairs. One shooter, one spotter. You'll alternate roles. Your score is based on first-round hits. No dovers, no second chances. He began calling out partner assignments, deliberately pairing experienced shooters with weaker ones in most cases. When he reached Reina's name, he paused. Corporal Ashford, you're with Seaman Recruit Chun. He indicated a nervous-looking young man who'd barely qualified the day before with 6 hits out of 10. Reina saw the setup immediately. Pairing her with the weakest shooter in the course would drag down her performance when it was her turn to spot for him. And when she shot, she'd have inadequate support. Jade caught her eye from across the formation, her expression sympathetic but helpless. The pairs spread out across the range, each team assigned to a different firing point. Reina and Chun made their way to position 7, the most exposed location with the worst natural cover and the most challenging wind conditions. Chun carried the spotting scope, his hands shaking slightly as he set up their position. You ever done unknown distance before? Reina asked him gently, trying to put him at ease. No, Corporal. This is my first advanced course. I barely made it through basic marksmanship. Chen's voice carried the weight of someone expecting to fail. I don't know why they put me in advanced training. I'm going to wash out anyway. Reina studied him for a moment, seeing past the nervousness to the underlying desire to succeed. You qualified, didn't you? That means someone saw potential in you. Let's just take it one target at a time. The range went hot, and targets began appearing across the landscape. Some were obvious, steel silhouettes against hillsides. Others were partially concealed, requiring careful observation to locate. Each pair had to find the targets, estimate range, calculate holds, and engage within a time limit. Chun was spotting first while Raina shot. He fumbled with the spotting scope, struggling to locate the first target even after Raina called it out. 700 meters, slight, right deflection behind the berm crest, she said patiently. You see it? I think so, Chun replied uncertainly. Maybe 750? Check the reference points, Raina coached. See that fence post at 500? The target is about 40% farther. That puts it around 700. Chun adjusted his estimate, and Raina made her shot. The steel rang clear across the distance. Hit! They worked through 5 targets, Chin spotting improving with each one as Raina patiently coached him through the process. She made first-round hits on all 5, despite Chin's inexperience. Then it was Chin's turn to shoot. Raina took the spotting scope and immediately located their targets, calling out ranges and wind corrections. But Chin's nervousness translated into poor trigger control and inconsistent breathing. His first shot missed by 2 feet at 600 meters. You're jerking the trigger, Raina said calmly. Take your time. Feel the breakpoint. Let it surprise you. Chin nodded, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. His second shot was better, clipping the edge of the target. His third missed entirely when a gust of wind caught it. From the observation tower, Raina could see Cress watching through binoculars. She knew what he saw. A perfect shooter paired with a struggling one. The combined score dragging down what should have been an easy performance for someone of her caliber. The message was clear. Individual excellence meant nothing if you couldn't work within a team. By the time the morning exercise ended, Raina had maintained her perfect shooting record, but Chun had only managed 2 hits out of 5. Their combined score was average at best. As teams returned to the assembly area, Cress called out scores. Teague and Morrison, 8 out of 10 combined. Good teamwork. Williams and Foster, 7 out of 10. Solid communication. He worked down the list until he reached Raina and Chun. Ashford and Chun, 7 out of 10. Ashford, 5 for 5. Chun, 2 for 5. The distinction was noted, but dismissed as Cress continued. Ashford, I'm seeing a pattern. You can shoot paper and steel just fine, but can you bring your partner up with you? Can you teach? Can you adapt your skills to help someone else succeed? Because that's what matters in the fleet. Nobody operates alone. Raina felt the frustration building, but kept her voice level. Understood, Master Guns. I'll work on communication. See that you do, Cress replied, already moving on to other teams. The afternoon session was worse. Cress introduced stress conditions, requiring shots to be taken after physical exertion. Teams had to low crawl 200 meters through sand, then immediately engage targets at long range while their hearts pounded and their breathing was ragged. The exercise was designed to simulate the physiological stress of combat movement. Raina and Shin crawled side by side through the course, sand working its way into every crease of their uniforms. Shin struggled with the physical demands, falling behind despite Raina's encouragement. When they reached the firing position, he was gasping for air, his arms shaking from exertion. Take a minute to recover, Raina said, but Cress's voice cut across the range. No recovery time. This is combat stress simulation. Engage your targets now. Chun tried to steady his rifle, but his entire body was trembling. His first shot went wide by 3 meters. His second wasn't much better. Raina, despite her own elevated heart rate from the crawl, managed to control her breathing and make her shots, but Chin's failures meant their team score was among the lowest of the day. In the debrief that evening, Cress used their performance as a teaching moment. Physical conditioning matters, he said, looking directly at Chun, but so does mental toughness. Some of you have the physical skills, but crack under pressure. Others have the shooting ability, but can't maintain it when stressed. He paused. And some of you can shoot perfectly when everything goes your way, but fall apart when you have to depend on a weaker partner. The implication was obvious, and Raina felt Teague's smirk from across the room without having to look. She'd been set up to fail by the pairing, and now her ability to overcome that setup was being questioned. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Succeed individually and be accused of not supporting your teammate. Fail to compensate for your partner's weaknesses and be accused of not being adaptable. After the debrief, Reyna found Chun sitting alone outside the barracks, his head in his hands. She sat down beside him, saying nothing for a long moment. "I'm sorry, Corporal," Chun finally said. "I'm dragging you down. You should have been paired with someone who can keep up." "You're doing fine," Reyna replied. "It's only day 2. Everyone improves with practice. Not like this. Did you see Master Guns? He's using me to prove a point about you. That your fancy shooting doesn't matter if you can't make your team better." Chen's voice cracked slightly. "And he's right. What good is having someone like you on a team if I'm just going to get us both killed?" Reyna turned to face him fully. "Listen to me. I've competed at the highest levels of civilian shooting. You know what I learned? The shooter who wins isn't always the one with the best equipment or even the most natural talent. It's the one who refuses to quit when things get hard. You're still here. You haven't quit. That counts for more than you think." Chen looked up, his eyes red-rimmed but hopeful. "You really think I can do this?" "I think you can get better every day," Reyna said. "And that's all anyone can ask. Tomorrow, we'll work on breathing control before the physical stress test. I'll show you some techniques that help me." "Thank you, Corporal," Chen said quietly. As Reyna walked back to her own barracks, she saw Jade waiting by the door. "That was kind what you did," Jade said. "Chen needed that." "He's trying hard," Reyna replied. "He just needs confidence." Jade hesitated, then spoke carefully. "You know Cress is going to keep pushing, right? He's trying to prove something. That skills without leadership are useless. That equipment without adaptability is meaningless. He's going to make it harder and harder until you either break or prove him wrong." "Then I'll prove him wrong," Reyna said simply. Day 3 brought elevated conditions. The marine layer had rolled in overnight, leaving visibility reduced to 800 meters in most directions. Perfect shooting whether this was not, but Cress seemed particularly energized by the challenge. The briefing was short and pointed. "Today we're running field scenarios," he announced. "Unknown targets at unknown distances in degraded visibility. You'll be working in the same pairs as yesterday. Your mission is to locate and neutralize threats before they close to within 400 meters of friendly positions. You have limited ammunition. Make your shots count." The scenario placed Reyna and Chun on a hilltop overlooking a valley shrouded in fog. Targets would appear intermittently as the fog shifted, requiring quick target identification and rapid engagement. It was the kind of scenario that played to experience and instinct, qualities that couldn't be purchased with expensive equipment. Reyna set up their position with Chun, talking him through the process of establishing fields of fire and preparing range cards despite the limited visibility. She'd spent the previous evening working with him on breathing techniques and trigger control, and she could see the improvement in how he handled the rifle now, more confidence in his movements, even if the execution wasn't there yet. The exercise began with deceptive calm. For the first 10 minutes, nothing moved in the fog below. Then a silhouette emerged at approximately 600 meters, partially obscured by the shifting mist. Reyna was spotting first. "Target 11 o'clock, 600 meters," she called quietly. Partially concealed, moving left to right. Chun settled behind his rifle, trying to find the target through his scope. The fog made depth perception nearly impossible, distances warping in the gray void. "I don't see it," he whispered, frustration evident in his voice. "Follow my trace," Reyna said patiently. "See that dark patch in the fog at 10 o'clock? Track right from there about 50 meters. The target moved across that gap 3 seconds ago. It'll appear again." Chun adjusted his aim, waiting. The silhouette emerged from the fog bank, exactly where Reyna predicted. He fired. The shot went high, disappearing into the mist. "You're still pulling up as you break the trigger," Reyna coached. "Relaxing your trigger finger, maintain your cheek weld. The target will cross that gap again in about 15 seconds. Chin nodded, adjusting his position slightly. When the target appeared again, his shot was better, catching the silhouette center mass. The target indicator flashed green. His first hit of the day. "Good shot," Reyna said. That's the technique. Remember that feeling. They engaged 4 more targets, Chen managing 2 more hits out of the 5 attempts. Then it was Reina's turn to shoot, while Chen spotted. The fog had thickened, reducing visibility to barely 500 meters. Chen struggled to locate targets in the murky conditions, his inexperience with optics showing. "Corporal, I think I see something at 7 o'clock," he said uncertainly. "Maybe 800 meters? Or is it closer?" Reina scanned the indicated direction, picking up the subtle movement that Chen had noticed. "It's closer than you think. About 600 meters. The fog compresses distances visually. Look for reference points." She made the shot despite the imprecise spot, trusting her own reads of the conditions. Hit! They worked through her 5 targets, Reina compensating for Chen's uncertain spotting with her own observations. She made 4 hits out of 5, missing 1 only when the fog completely obscured the target at the moment of firing. Their combined score was 6 out of 10, middle of the pack. Not excellent, not failing, just mediocre. Exactly what Kress seemed determined to keep them at. During the mid-morning break, Teague approached with 2 of his teammates. His pair had scored 9 out of 10, the highest of the morning. "Hey, Ashford," he called out, his tone friendly but carrying that familiar edge. "Tough shooting in this fog, huh? Really tests your fundamentals when you can't see what you're aiming at." "It's challenging for everyone," Reina replied neutrally, not taking the bait. True, but some of us are used to operating in less than ideal conditions. Combat doesn't wait for perfect weather." He glanced at Chen, who was cleaning his rifle nearby. "How's your partner working out?" "Chen's a good kid, just needs some seasoning." "He's improving," Reina said. "That's generous of you," Teague said. "Must be frustrating though, right? You could probably score perfect if you had a competent spotter. Instead, you're babysitting a recruit who can barely find targets in clear weather, let alone this soup." Chen's hands stilled on his rifle, his shoulders tensing. Reina saw Jade approaching from the corner of her eye, her expression concerned. "Petty Officer Teague," Reina said carefully, her voice level but carrying an undertone of steel. "Seaman Chen is working hard and showing improvement every day. That's what training is for. Not everyone starts at the same level, but dedication matters more than initial skill." "Dedication," Teague repeated, seeming to taste the word. "Sure, but you know what matters more than dedication? Results. You can dedicate yourself all you want, but if you can't perform when it counts, you're a liability." He looked directly at Chen now. "No offense, kid, but in the field, guys like you get people killed." Chen's face flushed red, anger mixing with shame. Jade reached them just as Chen stood abruptly, his rifle forgotten on the ground. "That's enough, Marcus," Jade said firmly. "Just stating facts," Teague replied with a shrug. "Master Guns says the same thing in debrief every day. Individual skill doesn't matter if the team fails. And right now, Ashford's team is failing because," he paused meaningfully, "well, we all know why." Before anyone could respond, Chief Holt's voice cut across the range. "Teague, Ashford, Chun, Kimura. Master Guns wants to see you in the tower. Now." They followed Holt to the observation tower, where Kress waited with Lieutenant Commander Victor Strand, the base commander. Strand was a lean man in his mid-40s with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. His presence was unusual. Base commanders didn't typically observe routine training exercises. "Afternoon, Corporal, Petty Officer, Seaman, Strand said, nodding to each in turn. "Master Guns has been updating me on the course progress. I want to see firsthand how the training is developing." Kress gestured to the display, showing team scores from the morning session. "As you can see, Commander, we have a range of performances. Some teams are excelling through cooperation and communication. Others are struggling with team integration despite individual competencies." His emphasis on the last phrase while looking at Reina was subtle but unmistakable. Strand noticed his eyes narrowing slightly. "Corporal Ashford," Strand said, "you've scored perfect or near perfect on every individual shooting test, but your team scores are consistently average. What's your assessment of the situation?" Reina chose her words carefully, aware that this was a test of a different kind. "Sir, I'm paired with a less experienced shooter. My focus has been on helping him improve while maintaining my own performance. Team scores reflect both our efforts. And has seamanship improved? Yes, sir. His hit rate has increased from 40% on day 1 to 50% today, and his fundamentals are strengthening. Strand turned to Chun. Seaman, do you feel you're receiving adequate support from your shooting partner? Chun hesitated, glancing at Raina before answering. Yes, sir. Corporal Ashford has been patient and helpful. I'm the weak link, sir. My inexperience is dragging down our team scores. That's an honest assessment, Strand said. He looked at Cress. Master Guns, what's the reasoning behind the current partner assignments? Cress didn't hesitate. Sir, advanced marksmanship isn't just about shooting. It's about leadership, adaptability, and bringing the entire team up to standard. Corporal Ashford has exceptional shooting skills, but those skills need to translate into combat effectiveness. That requires working with all skill levels, not just elite operators. Understood, Strand replied. And, Petty Officer Teague? Your team has consistently high scores. What's your secret? Teague straightened. Sir, my partner Morrison and I have similar skill levels and military experience. We communicate efficiently and trust each other's judgments. We both came up through traditional Navy marksmanship programs. The emphasis on traditional was subtle but present. Strand caught it. As opposed to non-traditional programs? Strand asked. Sir, I just mean we learned in military contexts rather than civilian competition, Teague said quickly, realizing he'd overstepped. Strand's expression remained neutral, but his eyes were cold. I see. Well, Petty Officer, in my experience, a good shot is a good shot regardless of where they learned. The bullet doesn't care if you trained at Quantico or at a civilian range. It goes where you aim it. He turned back to Cress. Master Guns, continue with your training plan. I'll be observing more closely over the next few days. The afternoon session brought a new challenge. Moving targets at extended ranges, simulating vehicles and personnel in tactical movement. The fog had partially lifted, leaving visibility variable and unpredictable. Cress gathered the teams at range 7, the longest course available, stretching out to 1,800 meters. This exercise simulates convoy protection, he announced. Targets will move across your field of view at various speeds and distances. You must identify threats, estimate lead, and engage effectively. In real-world scenarios, these would be vehicle-borne threats or personnel attempting to flank friendly positions. Hesitation gets people killed. So does missing. He paired teams at different vantage points along the ridgeline. Raina and Chun drew position 4, a challenging angle that required shooting across a valley with variable winds. The setup gave them less reaction time than other positions, another deliberate disadvantage. Chun was shooting first. Raina helped him establish his position, talking him through the sight picture and lead calculations for moving targets. The first target appeared, a silhouette moving left to right at approximately 1,000 meters, traveling at roughly 4 meters per second. Led it by 2 body widths, Raina coached. Aim for where it's going, not where it is. Chun tracked the target, his breathing controlled now, the techniques from their practice sessions showing. He pressed the trigger. The shot landed just behind the target, close but not quite right. Good track. Adjust your lead slightly, Raina said. Next target, same principle. The second target appeared closer, 800 meters, moving faster. Chin's shot caught at center mass. The indicator flashed green, and she heard him exhale in relief and satisfaction. That's 2 for you today, Raina said. You're getting it. They worked through Chin's 5 targets. He managed 3 hits, his best performance yet. When they switched roles, Raina took the rifle with quiet confidence. Chin's spotting had improved dramatically, his calls now more precise and his confidence stronger. Target right, 1,200 meters, moving right to left, he called. Speed approximately 5 meters per second. Raina acquired the target smoothly, calculated the lead, adjusted for the crosswind that was gusting through the valley. The shot was instinctive, muscle memory from thousands of hours of practice taking over. Hit. They worked through her string efficiently, Raina making all 5 shots despite the challenging conditions. 7 out of 10 combined. Above average for once, though still not the dominant performance Reina was capable of individually. As teams returned to the assembly area, she could see Kress making notes on his clipboard, his expression thoughtful. The debrief was different this time. Kress stood before them, but his tone had shifted slightly, less confrontational and more analytical. Today I saw improvement across most teams, he began. Seaman Shun, your hit rate has climbed from 40% to 60% in 3 days. That's solid progress. Keep working on your fundamentals. Chun straightened, surprise and pride evident on his face. Thank you, Master Guns. Kress continued down the list, offering specific feedback to each team. When he reached Reina and Chun, he paused. Ashford and Chun, 7 out of 10 today. Chun, 3 for 5. Ashford, 4 for 5 on moving targets at extended range. He looked up from his clipboard. Ashford, that last shot. 1,200 meters, moving target, variable wind. Walk me through your calculation. Reina stood, keeping her voice professional. Target speed, approximately 5 meters per second. Range, 1,200 meters. Flight time, roughly 1.4 seconds. Lead of 7 meters, approximately 1.5 target widths at that distance. Wind averaging 8 miles per hour from left to right, gusting to 12. Added half mil, right deflection to compensate. Took the shot during a lull in the gusts. The room had gone quiet, other trainees listening to the technical breakdown. Kress nodded slowly. That's advanced calculation done in under 10 seconds. Most shooters at this course would need 30 seconds with a calculator to work that out. Where'd you learn that speed? Competition shooting, sir. Precision rifle series matches have time limits. You learn to make calculations quickly or you don't place. And these calculations, they work the same way in military contexts? Kress asked, his tone genuinely curious now rather than challenging. Physics doesn't change, Master Guns. Wind is wind, distance is distance. The military adds tactical considerations, but the fundamental ballistics remain constant. Kress was quiet for a moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he moved on to the next team, but the edge in his voice when discussing Reina had diminished noticeably. After the debrief, Lieutenant Commander Strand approached Reina as trainees filed out. Walk with me. Corporal, he said, not quite an order, but not quite a request either. They walked toward the cliff overlooking the ocean, where the sound of waves provided privacy from other personnel. Strand was quiet for a long moment, watching the surf crash against the rocks below. I've been reviewing your file, he finally said. 5-time precision rifle series champion. Multiple national records. Youngest woman to win the precision division. That's an impressive civilian career to walk away from. I didn't walk away, sir. I redirected it. There's a difference. Why the Navy? Strand asked. With your record, you could have made a comfortable living as a professional shooter, instructor, maybe equipment endorsements. Reina chose her words carefully. Sir, I was good at competition because I outworked everyone else. But after 5 championships, I started wondering what the point was. Trophies and prize money fell hollow. I wanted to use these skills for something that mattered. And you think military marksmanship matters more than civilian competition? I think serving matters more than winning, Reina said simply. Competition taught me how to shoot. The Navy can teach me why to shoot. Strand nodded, seeming to appreciate the distinction. Master Gunnery Sergeant Kress is one of the best marksmanship instructors in the Navy. He's old school, traditional, sometimes rigid in his thinking. But he's effective. His students consistently perform at the highest levels in the fleet. I understand, sir. I don't think you do, Corporal. Strand turned to face her directly. Kress came up through the ranks the hard way. Enlisted at 18, worked every job from rifleman to instructor. He earned his position through decades of service and consistent excellence. When he sees someone like you, young, talented, with expensive equipment and an impressive civilian record, it challenges everything he believes about how good shooters are made. Sir, I'm not trying to challenge anything. I'm just trying to serve. I know that. And I think deep down, Kress knows that too. But he needs to see it proven under his standards, not civilian competition standards. That's why the difficult pairings, the challenging positions, the constant pressure. He's testing whether your skills are real or just a product of controlled range conditions and premium equipment. The assessment was fair, and Reyna acknowledged it with a nod. What happens if I pass his test, sir? Then you become one of his success stories, and he'll defend you as fiercely as he's been challenging you. Strand smiled slightly. But if you fail, if you crack under the pressure or prove unable to adapt your civilian skills to military contexts, he'll use you as an example of why the old ways are better. Either way, you're in a difficult position. Understood, sir. I'll keep working. I expect you will, Corporal. Strand started to walk away, then paused. One more thing. That Barrett of yours, the one everyone's been commenting on. I did some research. A custom rig like that, properly configured for your specifications, represents several years of prize winnings. That's not privilege. That's dedication. Anyone who can't see the difference isn't looking carefully enough. Thank you, sir, Reyna said quietly. That evening, as Reyna cleaned her borrowed rifle in the armory, Jade found her. Shin told me what you did today, Jade said. How you coached him through every shot, celebrated his improvements. Never made him feel like a burden, even though everyone knows Cress paired you two to handicap you. I'm not handicapped, Reyna replied, running a patch through the barrel. I'm training, just like everyone else. You're better than everyone else, Jade said bluntly. We all see it. Even Teague sees it, which is why he's so threatened. But you keep acting like you're just another trainee struggling to keep up. Because I am just another trainee, Reyna said. My competition record doesn't matter here. What matters is whether I can do the job the Navy needs me to do. Jade shook her head, smiling. You know what makes you dangerous, Reyna? It's not your shooting. It's your humility. People keep waiting for you to crack or show arrogance. And you just keep working. It's driving them crazy. Good, Reyna said with the faintest smile. Then they'll be really surprised when we get to the hard parts. Day 5 brought the most demanding training scenario yet. High-angle shooting from elevated positions, engaging targets both above and below the shooter's position. The physics changed dramatically with elevation, requiring different calculations for bullet trajectory. Gravity's effect altered at steep angles, and most shooters struggled with the mental adjustment required. The course was set up on the coastal bluffs, firing positions ranging from sea level to 300 feet above the target areas. Teams rotated through positions, shooting both uphill and downhill at distances from 500 to 1,600 meters. The wind coming off the ocean added another variable, swirling unpredictably around the cliff faces. Cress briefed them at dawn, the ocean spray misting over the assembled trainees. High-angle shooting is one of the most challenging disciplines in marksmanship. Your instincts will lie to you. The angle makes distances appear different than they are. Wind behaves erratically around terrain features. Your body position affects your natural point of aim more dramatically. This separates competent shooters from exceptional ones. Today's scenario simulated maritime interdiction. Targets represented threats on vessels at various distances and elevations. Time pressure was added, each target visible for only 20 seconds before disappearing. Miss your window and the threat escapes. Reyna and Chun drew position too, firing from a clifftop platform down toward targets at sea level and on lower cliff faces. The height was substantial, nearly 200 feet straight down in places. Chun looked pale as he set up, his fear of heights evident in how carefully he stayed away from the platform's edge. You all right? Reyna asked quietly. Heights aren't my favorite, Chun admitted. But I'll manage. Focus on the scope, not the drop. Once you're behind the rifle, it's just another shooting position. They started with Chun shooting first, Reyna spotting. The first target appeared on a simulated vessel 800 meters out, roughly 150 feet below their position. The angle was severe, requiring significant adjustment to calculations. Target, 10 o'clock, 800 meters, approximately 150 feet below us, Reyna called. You need to adjust your hold for the angle. Remember your training. Think horizontal distance, not actual line of sight. Chun settled behind his rifle, but his hands were shaking. The combination of height and pressure was overwhelming him. His first shot went wide by 3 meters, striking the water beyond the target. Breathe, Reyna said calmly. You know how to do this. Block everything else out. Just you, the rifle, and the target. Chen nodded, forcing his breathing to slow. The second target appeared, closer, but at an even steeper angle. This time his shot was better, clipping the edge. The third target he missed again, his nerves getting the better of him. By the time Chen finished his 5 shots, he'd only managed 1 solid hit. His frustration was visible as he stepped back from the rifle, his hand still trembling slightly. I'm sorry, Corpered. I'm blowing it. You're fighting your environment instead of adapting to it, Reyna said gently. But that hit you made on target 3? That was solid technique. You can do this. When Reyna took her position behind the rifle, she felt the familiar calm settle over her. High-angle shooting had been one of her specialties in competition. The precision rifle series often included stages with dramatic elevation changes, and she'd spent hundreds of hours practicing the necessary calculations. Chen's spotting was nervous but adequate. Target right, 900 meters, 200 feet down, he called as the first silhouette appeared on a cliff face below them. Reyna ran the calculation automatically. The steep angle meant the effective horizontal distance was closer to 850 meters. Wind was gusting right to left at approximately 10 miles per hour, accelerating as it funneled up the cliff face. She made her adjustments and fired. Hit! They worked through her 5 targets efficiently, Reyna adapting to each angle and distance with practiced precision. She made 4 hits out of 5, missing 1 only when a wind gust hit at the exact moment of firing, something no calculation could predict. Their combined score was 5 out of 10, below average despite Reyna's performance. As teams rotated to different positions, Reyna could see the pattern clearly now. No matter how well she shot, Chen's struggles kept them mediocre. And no matter how much Chen improved in easier scenarios, the advanced techniques pushed him back to his limits. During the mid-morning break, Teague approached with his usual entourage. His team had scored 8 out of 10 from a less challenging position. Tough morning, Ashford? He asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Challenging conditions, Reyna replied neutrally. Yeah, those high angles are brutal. Really separates the competitors from the operators. Teague's emphasis on the word competitors was deliberate. Competition ranges are usually flat, right? Nice, controlled environments where you can practice the same shot over and over until you nail it. Precision rifle series includes high-angle stages, Reyna said. It's part of the championship course. Sure, but not with someone's life depending on it. Not with real-world pressure. Teague looked at Chen, who was standing nearby. No offense, Chen, but how many more days is Ashford going to have to carry you? At some point, you become a liability rather than a trainee. Chen's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. Actually, Petty Officer Teague, Seaman Chen's improvement curve is one of the steepest in the class. Chief Warrant Officer Holt had approached unnoticed, carrying a tablet with training data. He held it up, showing a graph of hit percentages over time. Chen started at 40% on day 1. He's now at 55% overall, with a 65% rate on standard conditions. That's a 25% improvement in 5 days. By comparison, your improvement over the same period has been 3%. Teague's smile faltered. I started higher, Chief. There's less room for improvement. True, Holt acknowledged. But the Navy doesn't just need shooters who start strong. We need shooters who can learn, adapt, and improve under pressure. Chen is demonstrating those qualities. He turned to Reyna and Chen. You two are scheduled for position 5 after break. That's the platform at sea level shooting upward. Probably the hardest angle we have. Take 10 minutes to prepare. As Holt walked away, Teague's friendly mask had completely dropped. His expression was cold as he looked at Reyna. You got the chief running interference for you now. Must be nice having someone in your corner. I'd rather have it than need it, Reyna replied evenly. We'll see how long that lasts, Teague said, walking away with his group. Position 5 was indeed the most challenging yet. Shooting upward from sea level toward targets 200 feet above them, perched on cliff faces and platforms. The physics worked differently shooting up versus down, and the ocean spray added moisture to the air that affected bullet trajectory in subtle but significant ways. Chun was visibly struggling now, the combination of difficult angles and accumulated pressure wearing him down. His first 3 shots missed entirely, his confidence shattered. Reina took over spotting duties and tried to coach him through it, but she could see he was close to breaking. "I can't do this," Chun finally said after his 4th miss. "I'm not cut out for this level of training." "You're tired and frustrated," Reina said. "That's not the same as incapable. Take a breath. Reset your mindset." But Chun shook his head. "You should have a real partner, Corporal. Someone who can actually help you instead of dragging you down." Cress was right to pair us. He was proving a point about individual skill versus team capability, and I'm proving it for him every day. "You're improving every single day," Reina insisted. "The data shows it." "Not fast enough," Chun replied. "Not when it matters." When Reina took her turn shooting, she felt the weight of Chin's defeat alongside her own frustration. The upward angles were technically demanding, requiring precise calculations and consistent execution. She made her shots methodically, each one a statement that skill and dedication mattered regardless of circumstances. 4 hits out of 5. Combined with Chin's single hit, their team score was 5 out of 10 again. Perfectly mediocre. As they descended from position 5, Reina saw Lieutenant Commander Strand observing from the command post, his expression thoughtful as he watched the teams rotate through positions. That evening's debrief was tense. Cress stood before them, his clipboard showing the day's scores. Team performance varied significantly today, he began. High-angle shooting exposed weaknesses in fundamental understanding and mental toughness. Some teams excelled, others struggled. He went through the scores, praising strong performances and critiquing failures. When he reached Reina and Chun, he paused longer than usual. "Ashford and Chun, 5 out of 10. This is becoming a pattern. Ashford consistently performs at expert level individually. Chun shows improvement in controlled scenarios but falters under advanced conditions. The question is whether this partnership is helping or hindering both parties." The implication hung in the air. Reina felt Chun tense beside her, his shame and frustration palpable. She wanted to defend him, to point out the impossible situation they'd been placed in, but military discipline kept her silent. "Tomorrow we begin the final evaluation phase," Cress continued. "The scenarios will simulate real-world operations with full stress conditions. This is where we separate those who talk about being ready from those who actually are ready. Get rest. You'll need it." Day 6 dawned with unusual clarity, the marine layer having burned off overnight to reveal crystalline skies and unlimited visibility. The kind of day that seemed deceptively perfect but would reveal every small error in technique. Cress gathered the trainees for what he called the comprehensive field exercise, a multi-stage scenario combining every skill they'd learned over the past week. The exercise simulated a high-value target interdiction mission. Teams would move through varied terrain, engaging targets at unknown distances from multiple positions under time constraints. Physical conditioning, navigation, quick decision-making, and precise shooting all factored into the scoring. It was designed to be exhausting and demanding, pushing trainees to their breaking points. "You'll move as pairs through the course," Cress explained, gesturing to a map of the training area. 6 stations, each with different challenges. You have 4 hours to complete the entire circuit. Failure to finish means automatic failure of the course. Your combined score across all stations determines your final evaluation. Reina studied the map, noting the distances involved. The circuit covered nearly 8 kilometers of rough terrain with significant elevation changes. Carrying full gear and weapons, maintaining pace while preserving energy for accurate shooting, would test even experienced operators. Teams departed at 5-minute intervals. Reina and Chun drew a middle start time, neither advantaged nor disadvantaged by position. As they waited for their turn, Reina saw Chin's hands trembling slightly as he checked his gear for the 3rd time. "We can do this," she said quietly. "One station at a time. Don't think about the whole course, just the next objective." Chin nodded, but his anxiety was palpable. "What if I slow us down? What if we don't finish because of me? Then we don't finish together, Reyna replied. But we're going to finish. Trust your training. Their turn came. They moved out a steady jog, weapons slung, gear rattling. The first station was 2 kilometers away across relatively flat terrain, but the pace and weight quickly took their toll. Chun was breathing hard within 10 minutes, his conditioning not matching Reyna's years of athletic training. Reyna adjusted their pace slightly, finding a rhythm Chun could maintain. They reached Station 1 with time to spare. The challenge was straightforward, 3 targets at 600, 700, and 800 meters. Standard shooting from prone positions with a 2-minute time limit. Chun shot first, his breathing ragged from the run. His first shot missed high, the elevated heart rate affecting his trigger control. Reyna talked him through the breathing exercises they practiced. His second shot hit. The third missed again, time pressure mounting. When Reyna took her turn, she forced her own physiology under control through practice discipline. The techniques she developed for competition, controlling heart rate and breathing after physical exertion, served her well. 3 shots, 3 hits. Their station score was 4 out of 6. Station 2 was another kilometer away, this time uphill. The terrain grew steeper, the morning sun beginning to heat the day. Chun struggled more visibly now, his pace slowing. Reyna stayed with him, offering encouragement, but knowing that at this rate, they might not finish the circuit in time. They reached Station 2 with 15 minutes of their 4 hours already consumed. This station required shooting from an improvised rest position at 901,000 meters, moving targets crossing laterally. Chun's first 2 shots both missed as he fought to control his breathing and steady his aim. His frustration was mounting, each failure compounding the pressure. Reyna made both her shots, but their station score was only 2 out of 4. They were falling behind the pace needed to maintain passing scores. Station 3 was the worst yet. Another 2 kilometers, this time through soft sand that sapped energy with every step. The temperature had climbed into the 80s, and both shooters were drenched in sweat by the time they reached the position. The challenge involved high-angle shooting down into a ravine, targets at 1,200 and 1,400 meters. Chun was physically spent. His hands shook from exhaustion as he tried to steady his rifle. His first shot missed by 5 meters, his technique falling apart under the accumulated fatigue. His second shot was no better. "I can't," he gasped, lowering his rifle. "I can't hold steady. Everything's shaking." Reyna took her shots, making 1 hit and missing 1 due to a wind gust she'd miscalculated in her fatigue. Their station score was 1 out of 4. They were now well below passing pace, and they'd only completed half the circuit. As they prepared to move to Station 4, Chun collapsed to one knee, gasping for air. "I'm done, Corporal. I can't finish this. You should go on without me." "That's not an option," Reyna said firmly. "We finish together or we fail together. Those are the only 2 choices. But you could pass if you weren't carrying me," Chun protested. "I'm destroying your evaluation." Reyna knelt beside him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. This exercise isn't about individual performance. It's about team capability under stress. If I abandon you to save my own score, I prove exactly what Crest suspected from the beginning, that I'm a competitor who can't function as part of a military team, that my skills are selfish rather than service-oriented. I won't do that." Chun looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. "Why you care so much? Everyone else treats me like a burden." "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated," Reyna said. "To have people assume you don't belong based on how you look or where you came from. And I know that the only way to prove them wrong is to refuse to quit." Chun slowly stood, drawing a deep breath. Okay, let's finish this." They moved toward Station 4, their pace slower now, but determined. The station was another kilometer away, mercifully mostly downhill. The challenge involved unknown distance targets in mixed terrain, requiring quick range estimation and rapid engagement. 5 targets, 1 minute each. Chun's performance had bottomed out, his exhaustion overwhelming his technique. He missed all 3 of his targets. Reyna, drawing on reserve she developed through years of competitive pressure, made 2 of her 3 shots. Their station score was 2 out of 6. With Station 5 still ahead and time running short, they pushed forward. The terrain grew rougher, forcing them to navigate around obstacles and scramble over rocky outcroppings. Chun fell twice, scraping his hands and knees but refusing to stay down. They reached Station 5 with only 40 minutes remaining for the final 2 stations. This challenge involved shooting from unstable positions, simulating combat scenarios where ideal shooting platforms weren't available. Chun managed 1 hit out of 3 through sheer determination. Reina made 2 out of 3. Station score, 3 out of 6. The final station was nearly a kilometer away, and they had 20 minutes to reach it, engage the targets, and finish the course. They ran, Chun stumbling but refusing to stop, Reina staying beside him despite being capable of much greater speed. They reached Station 6 with 8 minutes to spare, both gasping for air, both pushed beyond what they'd thought possible. The final challenge was the most difficult yet. 3 targets at 1,600 meters in variable wind conditions. Each shooter had 1 minute per target. Chan was beyond exhausted, his rifle wavering as he tried to steady it. His first shot missed by meters. His second was no better. For his third shot, Reina stood behind him, talking him through every step, her voice calm despite her own fatigue. "Trust your fundamentals," she said. "Block out everything else. You've made this shot before in practice. You can make it now." Chun settled, his breathing somehow steadying. He pressed the trigger. The distant target indicator flashed green. Hit! His first successful shot of the entire final 2 stations. Reina took her position for the final shots of the course. 1,600 meters required absolute precision, and her exhaustion made every calculation harder. But years of competition had taught her how to perform when her body screamed to quit. She made 2 hits out of 3. They completed the course with 3 minutes to spare, both collapsing beside their weapons once the final shot was called. Their combined score for the comprehensive exercise was barely passing, but they had finished. As teams straggled back to the assembly area over the next hour, the full picture emerged. 2 teams had failed to complete the circuit in time. 3 more had finished, but with failing scores. Reina and Chin's barely passing grade put them in the middle of the pack, neither distinguished nor disgraced. Kress conducted the debrief with his typical stern demeanor, but something had changed in how he looked at certain trainees. Ashford and Chun, he called out. Barely passing score on the comprehensive exercise. Significant struggles at multiple stations. However, he paused. You finished the course together despite having ample opportunity to improve individual time by abandoning a struggling partner. That demonstrates understanding of team integrity over personal achievement. The acknowledgement was subtle but present, the first time Kress had offered anything approaching approval of their partnership. Day 7 brought a change in the training schedule. Instead of another demanding field exercise, Kress announced they would spend the morning on equipment familiarization with specialized weapon systems. This included the opportunity for trainees to use their personal equipment under controlled conditions, comparing performance characteristics against standard military weapons. For Reina, this meant finally getting her Barrett M82 out of storage. She retrieved the case from the secure locker, aware of the attention the familiar shape drew as she carried it to the range. 6 days of proving herself with standard equipment had done little to diminish the skepticism surrounding her custom rifle. The morning session was structured as a demonstration and comparison exercise. Each trainee with personal equipment would shoot a qualification string, then shoot the same string with standard military weapons. The goal was to analyze whether custom equipment provided meaningful advantages or whether, as Kress had consistently implied, it was mostly expensive window dressing. Teague was first, using his personally owned M40 with upgraded optics. His performance with both his weapon and the standard rifle was nearly identical, scoring 8 out of 10 with each. Kress used this as a teaching moment, pointing out that at these skill levels, equipment differences mattered less than shooter capability. When Reina's turn came, she opened her case methodically, assembling the Barrett with practiced efficiency. The rifle drew immediate attention, its size and obvious quality standing out among the other weapons on the line. She heard whispered comment from nearby trainees, the same skepticism she'd faced all week. Corporal Ashford will now demonstrate with her personal weapon, Cress announced, his tone neutral, but carrying an undertone suggesting he expected to make a point about expensive equipment. 10 targets, ranges from 800 to 1,800 meters, unknown sequence, 3-minute time limit. Raina settled behind the Barrett, feeling the familiar weight and balance. The custom stock fit her perfectly, years of adjustments making it an extension of her body. The trigger broke exactly where she expected it, the recoil management system functioning flawlessly. But more than the equipment, she felt the confidence that came from thousands of hours with this specific weapon. The first target appeared at 1,400 meters. She acquired it smoothly, made her calculations automatically, and fired. Hit. The second target at 1,000 meters. Hit. She worked through the string with mechanical precision, each shot flowing naturally into the next. When the exercise ended, she'd made 9 hits out of 10, missing one only due to a last-second wind shift. Now with standard equipment, Cress called. Same sequence. Raina cleared the Barrett and picked up the M40, the difference immediately apparent. The rifle was well-maintained, but generic, fitted for an average shooter rather than customized for her specific frame and shooting style. The trigger pull was heavier, the stock length slightly wrong. These were minor differences, but at extreme ranges, minor differences mattered. She shot the sequence again, compensating as best she could for the unfamiliar weapon. 7 hits out of 10. Still good shooting by any objective measure, but a clear 2-point drop from her performance with the Barrett. Cress studied his notes, his expression thoughtful. 2-point improvement with personal equipment. That's a significant delta at extreme ranges. He looked at Raina directly. Walk us through what makes your weapon superior for this application. Raina stood, keeping her explanation technical and objective. The Barrett M82 platform provides several advantages for extreme, long-range work. The 50 caliber round maintains supersonic velocity past 2,000 meters, reducing wind drift effects compared to smaller calibers. The custom stock is fitted specifically to my build, ensuring consistent cheek weld and eye relief. The trigger system is tuned to my preference, allowing more precise break control. The upgraded optics provide clearer target resolution at extended ranges. And these modifications, Cress asked, they're all competition legal? Yes, master guns. Everything on this rifle is within Precision Rifle Series equipment regulations. No modifications are outside civilian legal parameters. Cress nodded slowly. Cost for a setup like this? The rifle, optics, modifications, and custom loading equipment together ran about $22,000, Raina replied. Accumulated over 5 years through competition winnings and manufacturer sponsorships. A heavy silence followed. $22,000 was more than most junior enlisted made in a year. The whispers started again, but this time they carried a different tone. The sheer magnitude of resources represented by her equipment finally registered as evidence of dedication rather than privilege. That's a significant investment in your craft, Cress said finally. Represents serious commitment to the discipline. He paused, seeming to wrestle with something internally. I owe you an apology, Corporal. I made assumptions about where your equipment came from and what it represented. I was wrong. The admission stunned the assembled trainees into silence. Cress admitting error was apparently unprecedented enough to shock even veterans of his previous courses. You've proven over this past week that you have solid fundamentals, Cress continued, that your competition background translates to military application, that you understand team dynamics and service over self-interest. The equipment enhances your capability, but it doesn't define it. That distinction matters. Thank you, Master Guns, Raina said, unsure how else to respond. The afternoon session moved to advanced technique instruction, with Cress teaching specialized methods for extreme-range shooting. For the first time, he asked Raina to assist with the demonstration, using her Barrett to show the techniques at distances beyond what the standard M40 could reliably achieve. As she demonstrated wind reading techniques at 1,900 meters, successfully engaging targets that drew murmurs of appreciation from the other trainees. Reyna felt the shift in atmosphere. The skepticism hadn't vanished entirely, but it had been replaced by something closer to professional respect. During afternoon break, Chen approached with Jade. "That was incredible, Corporal," Chun said, his voice carrying genuine admiration. "I've never seen anyone shoot like that." "It's just practice," Reyna replied. "Thousands of hours of it." Jade smiled knowingly. "You know what changed today? It wasn't your shooting. It was Cress publicly acknowledging what most of us already knew, that you earned everything you have. That shuts down the narrative Teague and others have been pushing all week." "Speaking of Teague," Chun said quietly, nodding toward the far side of the range where Marcus stood with several other trainees. "He doesn't look happy." Indeed, Teague's expression was dark as he watched Reyna pack away her Barrett. The public acknowledgement from Cress had undercut his week-long campaign to diminish her accomplishments. His pride, already bruised by her consistent performance, had taken another hit. As trainees prepared to depart the range for evening chow, Lieutenant Commander Strand appeared, accompanied by a civilian in business attire. The civilian carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, and his presence drew immediate attention. "Attention on deck," someone called, and trainees snapped to attention. "As you were," Strand said. "This is Mr. Holloway from the Naval Weapons Testing Center. He's here to observe our advanced marksmanship program and assess potential candidates for a specialized training initiative." Holloway's eyes swept the assembled trainees, pausing noticeably on Reyna and her Barrett case. "Commander Strand speaks highly of your program. Master guns," he said to Cress. "I'm particularly interested in seeing capabilities at extreme ranges. Past 2,000 meters. We can arrange a demonstration tomorrow," Cress replied. "We have several qualified shooters who can showcase advanced techniques." "Excellent," Holloway said. "I'll observe your morning session." He glanced at his watch. "Commander, we should discuss the program parameters." As Strand and Holloway departed, speculation rippled through the trainees about what specialized program might be recruiting from their course. Reyna focused on cleaning her equipment, trying not to think about opportunities beyond completing the current training. That evening, as she performed final maintenance on the Barrett before returning it to storage, Chief Holt found her in the armory. "Quite a day, Corporal," he said, settling onto a nearby bench. "Cress doesn't apologize often. Actually, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen it in 10 years of working with him." "I appreciated it," Reyna said, "though I understand why he was skeptical initially." "Do you?" Holt asked. "Because I'm not sure you fully grasp how much you've challenged his worldview this week." Cress built his entire career on the principle that dedication and fundamentals matter more than resources. Then you show up with equipment he could never afford, skills developed outside military structure, and a background he doesn't understand. You represented everything he thought was wrong with modern military culture. "But I proved him wrong," Reyna said. "No, Holt correctamente. You proved him incomplete. Your dedication and fundamentals are exactly what he values. But you also proved that resources matter when they're earned through the same dedication he respects. You didn't disprove his philosophy. You expanded it. That's why the apology was so significant." Reyna considered this as she secured the Barrett in its case. "What's tomorrow going to bring, Chief? This specialized program Holloway mentioned?" "Can't say for certain," Holt replied. "But if I were guessing, I'd say someone noticed that we have a championship-level long-range shooter currently serving, and they might have uses for that particular skill set. Just a guess, though." As Reyna walked back to her barracks, she saw Teague standing in shadow near the edge of the building. Their eyes met briefly, and she saw something dangerous in his expression. The public validation she'd received today had made an enemy where before there'd only been a rival. Day 8 began with unusual activity on the base. Emergency vehicles moved with purpose along the perimeter roads, and a normal morning routine felt disrupted by an underlying tension. Trainees assembled for the scheduled demonstration for Mr. Holloway, but the civilian observer had not yet arrived at the range. Cress paced near the observation tower, checking his radio repeatedly. His expression carried concern rather than his usual stern focus. Something was developing beyond their training bubble, something that had command's attention. Lieutenant Commander Strand arrived at the range in a vehicle moving faster than regulation allowed. He spoke briefly with Kress, their conversation too quiet to overhear but clearly urgent. After a moment, Kress nodded and turned to address the assembled trainees. "Change of plans this morning. We have a developing situation that requires our attention. Remain in position and stand by for further instructions." The vague announcement only heightened the tension. Reyna saw other trainees exchanging concerned glances, speculation running through the formation. Jade moved closer to her, keeping her voice low. "Something's really wrong. I've never seen Strand move like that." Before Reyna could respond, the radio on Kress's belt crackled with urgent traffic. His expression darkened as he listened, then he motioned to Strand. They conferred again, this time with more animated gestures. Finally, Kress returned to the trainees. "Here's the situation. Approximately 40 minutes ago, a civilian Cessna experienced mechanical failure and made an emergency landing in the Western Restricted Zone. The aircraft came down in Sector 7, near the old ordnance disposal area." Reyna felt her stomach tighten. She knew Sector 7 from map studies during the course. It was marked as hazardous due to unexploded ordnance from decades of weapons testing. Access was strictly prohibited except for specialized disposal teams. The pilot survived the landing but was injured in the impact, Kress continued. He egressed the aircraft but became disoriented and wandered into a marked minefield containing unstable explosive devices scheduled for controlled disposal. His current position places him approximately 30 meters from several devices that ordnance disposal has classified as critically unstable. The assembled trainees were silent now, the training exercise forgotten as the reality of the situation sank in. Yodi teams are staging, but they estimate 15 to 20 minutes before they can safely extract the pilot, Kress said. The problem is that the pilot is exhibiting signs of severe head trauma and internal injuries. Medical assessment via drone surveillance suggests he may have less than 15 minutes before he loses consciousness. If he collapses where he is, he'll fall onto one of the unstable devices. Strand stepped forward. The ordnance disposal team has identified a possible solution. One of the devices, a Mark 82 bomb with degraded casing, could be remotely detonated to create a pressure wave that would trigger sympathetic detonation of the surrounding unstable ordnance. This would create a safe corridor for rapid extraction. But, Kress added grimly, the detonator mechanism on that particular device has partially failed. Remote detonation isn't reliable. The only guaranteed method is a precision shot to the detonator housing. A 2-inch target at extreme range in variable wind conditions. The specifications hung in the air. Extreme range. Precision target. Lives in the balance. This was beyond training exercise difficulty. This was the kind of shot that ended careers if it failed. Yodi has requested sniper support, Strand said. Master Guns has identified 3 shooters qualified to attempt this shot. The problem is range. The nearest safe firing position with line of sight to the target is 2,800 meters from the device. Reyna's breath caught. 2,800 meters. Nearly 2 miles. At that distance, a bullet drop exceeded 60 feet. Wind drift could push the round several meters off target. The margin for error was measured in millimeters. She'd made shots at similar ranges in competition, but never with a life depending on success. Petty Officer Teague, Kress called. "You're qualified expert with the M107. Can you make the shot?" Teague's confidence visibly warred with the reality of the distance. "Master Guns, I can attempt it, but I've never successfully engaged past 2,200 meters. This is beyond my reliable range." "Understood," Kress said, then turned. "Petty Officer Garrison, you've scored highest on our long-range qualifications after Ashford." "Assessment?" Garrison, a steady shooter with years of experience, shook his head slowly. "Master Guns, I'm not confident at that distance. My personal best is 2,400 meters in ideal conditions. This shot requires guaranteed first-round accuracy. I can't promise that." Cress looked at Reyna, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. The acknowledgement from the previous day had been genuine, but now he was weighing whether to stake a man's life on her capabilities. Corporal Ashford, your competition record includes successful engagements past 3,000 meters. Can you make the shot? Every eye turned to her. Teague's expression was unreadable. Chen looked hopeful and terrified simultaneously. Jade's face showed complete faith. But Reyna focused only on the technical assessment, running calculations in her mind. With my Barrett, in current wind conditions, assuming I can get accurate atmospheric data and have time to dial my solution, yes, Master Guns, I can make that shot. The certainty in her voice surprised even herself, but it was based on cold calculation rather than bravado. She'd made similar shots dozens of times in competition. The pressure was different, the stakes incomparably higher, but the physics remained constant. Strand made the decision. Corporal Ashford, you're authorized to attempt the shot. Master Guns, get her whatever support she needs. We have approximately 12 minutes before the pilot's condition becomes critical. The next several minutes moved with controlled urgency. Reyna retrieved her Barrett from storage, checking every system with practiced efficiency. Chief Hull provided meteorological data, wind speed and direction at multiple altitudes, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure. All the variables that would affect a bullet traveling nearly 3 miles. A vehicle raced them to the designated firing position, a hilltop overlooking the western restricted zone. EOD personnel had already established a command post, their equipment monitoring the pilot's vital signs via remote sensors. Reyna could see the tiny figure in the distance through high-powered spotting scopes, a man sitting motionless amid a field of half-buried ordnance, clearly injured and fading. The target device was even smaller in the scope, the detonator housing barely visible at this range. 2 inches of critical target on a device that couldn't be approached safely. Miss high or left, and nothing happened. Miss low or right, and she might detonate the wrong device, potentially killing the pilot. Cress set up beside her as primary spotter, his decades of experience now working in her support rather than opposition. Atmospheric conditions, he called, reading data from multiple sources. Wind at firing position, 8 miles per hour from southwest. Wind at target, estimated 10 to 12 miles per hour, same direction. Crosswinds at mid-range elevation, variable 6 to 9 miles per hour. Reyna processed the information, building her firing solution. At 2,800 meters, her bullet would take approximately 4 seconds to reach the target. During that time, it would drop nearly 70 feet and drift right approximately 8 feet in current wind conditions. She made adjustments to her scope, dialing in the elevation and windage corrections that would send the bullet on the precise trajectory needed. Range confirmed at 2,800 meters. Cress continued. Target is the detonator housing on the Mark 82, visible as the silver cylinder on the western side of the device. Impact on the housing should trigger the internal mechanism and initiate detonation. Reyna settled behind her Barrett, feeling the familiar weight and balance. Her breathing slowed automatically, heart rate dropping as competition discipline took over. She trained for this moment, not knowing the specific circumstances, but preparing for the day when her skills would matter beyond scores and trophies. Pilot's vitals are dropping. An EOD technician called from the command post. Estimate 8 minutes to loss of consciousness. Take your time, Corporal, Strand said quietly. We trust your judgment on when conditions are optimal. Reyna watched the wind flags through her scope, observed the mirage patterns at various distances, felt the air movement against her face. The wind was gusting, inconsistent, making the shot even more challenging. She needed a window of relative calm, a moment when all the variables aligned. 2 minutes passed. 5. The pressure mounted with each second, voices from the command post providing updates on the pilot's deteriorating condition. But Reyna blocked it all out, focusing only on the elements that mattered. Wind, distance, target. The shot was everything. 6 minutes had elapsed. The pilot's vital signs continued their downward trajectory, each update from the command post adding weight to the already crushing pressure. Reyna remained motionless behind her Barrett, watching, waiting, reading the environment with skills honed over thousands of competition rounds. The wind patterns were the key. At this extreme range, even a tumaleperhor variation could push her bullet off target by inches. She needed consistency, a moment when the gust aligned across the entire trajectory path from her position to the target nearly 3 kilometers away. Pilot heart rate dropping, BP at 90/60 and falling, the EOD medic called. Estimate 5 minutes maximum before loss of consciousness. Chen had positioned himself nearby with a secondary spotting scope, his earlier struggles forgotten as he focused on supporting Reyna however he could. Wind flags at middle distance are steadying, Corporal, he called quietly. Mirage patterns showing more consistent flow. Reyna saw it too. The chaotic gusting was settling into a more predictable pattern. Southwest wind at 8 miles per hour at her position, increasing to steady 10 miles per hour at target distance. The crosswinds at mid-range were calming, the turbulence that had made the shot impossible now resolving into manageable variables. She made a final minute adjustment to her windage, a quarter-minute correction based on the settling pattern. Her breathing dropped into the rhythm she practiced 10,000 times for seconds in, pause, 6 seconds out, pause. Heart rate settling below 60 beats per minute despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Through her scope at maximum magnification, the detonator housing was barely visible, a metallic glint among the weathered explosive casing. 2 inches of target at 2,800 meters. The math was simple but unforgiving. At this distance, a 1-inch miss at the target represented a .036 milliradian error in her aim. Perfection wasn't the goal. Perfection was the minimum requirement. Wind holding steady, Kress called, his voice calm and professional despite the circumstances. Flags consistent across visible range. Mirage pattern stable. You have a window, Corporal. Reyna found her natural respiratory pause, that moment between breaths where the body was perfectly still. The crosshairs settled on the detonator housing, decades of muscle memory guiding her hands. She'd made this shot before in competition, different targets, but identical physics. The bullet knew nothing about pressure or consequences. It only knew trajectory, velocity, wind drift, and gravity. Her finger took up the trigger, slack smoothly, finding the break point with the intimate knowledge of 10,000 rounds through this exact trigger system. The world contracted to just the reticle, the target, and the perfect stillness of complete focus. Pilot vitals critical. The medic's voice came from somewhere distant and irrelevant. 30 seconds to loss of consciousness. The trigger broke with crystalline precision, the recoil impulse absorbed by the Barrett's sophisticated dampening system. The shot felt perfect, that indefinable sensation when every element aligned exactly as it should. The rifle's report echoed across the valley, the sound taking its own time to reach the distant target area. For seconds, the bullet traveled its parabolic arc, rising 70 feet above the line of sight before gravity reclaimed it, the spin imparted by the rifling keeping it stable through nearly 3 miles of atmosphere. Wind pushed it right, exactly the amount she'd calculated. The Earth's rotation had its microscopic effect. Every variable came together in that 4-second flight. Impact. The detonator housing exploded in a flash of light visible even at this extreme distance. A fraction of a second later, the main charge of the Mark 82 detonated with a massive concussion that rolled across the valley like thunder. The explosion triggered sympathetic detonations in 3 adjacent devices, exactly as the EOD team had calculated. Dust and debris erupted in a coordinated sequence that cleared a corridor through the minefield. Perfect hit, Kress called, his voice carrying uncharacteristic emotion. Target destroyed, detonation sequence initiated as planned. At the command post, organized chaos erupted as the extraction team launched forward. A helicopter that had been standing by roared overhead, racing toward the cleared corridor. Medical personnel moved with practiced efficiency, every second critical now. The pilot had slumped forward at the moment of detonation, the concussion wave and noise overwhelming his already compromised system. But the cleared path allowed the extraction team to reach him within 90 seconds. Reyna watched through her scope as they secured him to a stretcher and loaded him into the helicopter, which immediately lifted off toward the base medical facility. Pilot extracted, Strand announced over the radio. Medical team reports vitals stabilizing. Good work, everyone. Reyna saved her Barrett and sat back from the scope, only now feeling the tremor in her hands as adrenaline drained from her system. The magnitude of what had just happened settled over her like a weight. One shot, one chance. A man's life hanging on her ability to place a bullet into a 2-inch target at a distance most people couldn't even see clearly. Chin approached, his face showing a mixture of awe and relief. Corporal, he paused, searching for words. That was the most incredible shot I've ever witnessed. It was physics in practice, Reyna replied quietly, though her voice shook slightly. Same principles we've been learning all week. The hell it was, Teague said, approaching from behind. His expression was complicated, pride warring with something darker. That was a career shot under impossible pressure. Nobody else here could have made it. The admission from Teague carried more weight than any praise from Kress or Strand. Reyna nodded acknowledgement, unsure how to respond. Kress descended from the observation post, his weathered face showing rare emotion. Corporal Ashford, he said formally. That was exceptional marksmanship under extreme pressure. You saved that pilot's life today. He extended his hand, and Reyna shook it, feeling the strength and sincerity in his grip. I owe you another apology. I questioned whether competition skills would translate to real-world military application. You've answered that question definitively. Thank you, Master Guns, Reyna said. But I had support. Chief Holt's atmospheric data, your spotting, Chin's wind readings. This was team success. Kress smiled slightly. Spoken like someone who understands military service. But make no mistake, Corporal, you made the shot. You carried the weight of that responsibility and delivered when it mattered most. That's the mark of an exceptional operator. Lieutenant Commander Strand joined them, his expression showing both relief and satisfaction. Corporal Ashford, I've just received word that Mr. Holloway witnessed your shot via remote feed. He wants to speak with you about this specialized training program. Apparently, they've been looking for someone with exactly your skill set for a specific assignment. Sir, I haven't even completed this course yet, Reyna protested. You completed it the moment you made that shot, Strand replied. Everything else is just formality. Master Guns, I assume Corporal Ashford will graduate with honors? Highest honors, Kress confirmed, along with a commendation for her actions today. The other trainees had gathered around, and Reyna saw their expressions ranging from genuine respect to reluctant admiration. Jade was grinning broadly. Chin looked like he might cry from pride. Even some of Teague's usual supporters seemed genuinely impressed. The ride back to the main base was subdued, each person processing what they'd witnessed. Reyna cleaned her Barrett methodically, the familiar routine helping her process the emotional aftermath. She'd trained for years to make shots like that, but the weight of real consequences was something no competition could prepare you for. At the armory, as she secured her equipment, Chief Holt found her. The pilot's going to make it, he said without preamble. Doctors say another 5 minutes, and he would have bled out internally. You gave him those 5 minutes. I just made the shot, Chief. The EOD team did the hard part. Holt shook his head. You know what the difference is between a good shot and a great one, Corporal? A good shot makes difficult shots under pressure. A great shot makes impossible shots when lives depend on it. Today you proved you're great. He paused, studying her face. How are you holding up? Still processing, sir. It felt like competition until it didn't. Until I realized what missing meant. That awareness is what makes you trustworthy with that capability, Holt said. The shooters who scare me are the ones who don't feel the weight of it. You'll carry this shot with you for the rest of your career. Let it remind you why we train to these standards. As evening fell, news of the rescue spread through the base. Reyna found herself receiving congratulations from personnel she'd never met, her actions becoming the story everyone was discussing. The skepticism that had followed her for the past week had evaporated, replaced by a respect that felt both validating and overwhelming. The final day of the advanced marksmanship course arrived with ceremonial formality. The past week's training culminated in a graduation ceremony held on the main parade ground, with base leadership and distinguished guests in attendance. Among them was Mr. Holloway, the civilian observer whose interest in extreme-range capabilities had become suddenly very relevant. The ceremony began with Lieutenant Commander Strand addressing the assembled trainees and guests. This course represents some of the most demanding marksmanship training the Navy offers, he said, his voice carrying across the formation. The 18 graduates standing before you have demonstrated not only exceptional shooting skills, but the mental toughness and team integrity required for advanced operations. He proceeded through various awards and recognitions, acknowledging top performers in different categories. When he reached the final commendations, his tone shifted to something more serious. Yesterday, this course faced an unexpected real-world test. A civilian pilot's life hung in the balance, requiring a precision shot at extreme range under critical time pressure. The shot required was beyond the capability of most military marksmen, at a distance that pushes the absolute limits of the rifle platform used. The assembled crowd leaned forward slightly, attention focused. Corporal Raina Ashford, front and center, Strand commanded. Raina marched forward, her movements crisp despite the nerves churning in her stomach. She stopped before Strand and saluted, holding the position as he continued. Corporal Ashford successfully engaged a 2-inch target at 2,800 meters on the first shot, enabling the safe extraction of an injured civilian. This action directly saved a man's life and exemplified the highest standards of marksmanship and service. For her exceptional performance, Corporal Ashford is hereby awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Combat Distinguishing Device and graduates this course with highest honors. Strand pinned the medal to her uniform as applause erupted from the assembled crowd. Master Gunnery Sergeant Kress stepped forward, carrying a plaque that designated her as the distinguished graduate of the course. His expression showed genuine pride as he shook her hand. Additionally, Kress said, his voice carrying unusual warmth, Corporal Ashford demonstrated throughout this course the dedication, teamwork, and adaptability that define exceptional military operators. Her willingness to support struggling teammates despite personal cost, and her consistent professionalism under pressure set the standard for future classes. As Raina returned to formation, she caught Chen's eye. He was grinning so widely it looked painful, clearly thrilled by her recognition. Jade gave her a subtle thumbs up. Even Teague offered a respectful nod, whatever resentment he'd carried apparently tempered by the undeniable nature of her achievement. After the ceremony, as graduates mingled with guests and leadership, Mr. Holloway approached Raina with Strand. Corporal Ashford, Holloway said, extending his hand. That was a remarkable shot yesterday. I've spent 20 years in weapons testing and development, and I can count on one hand the number of shooters I've seen with that level of capability. Thank you, sir, Raina replied. I had excellent support and training. Which brings me to why I'm here, Holloway continued. The Naval Weapons Testing Center is developing a new generation of long-range precision systems. We need shooters who can test these systems at extreme ranges and provide technical feedback for improvement. Your combination of competition expertise and military service makes you an ideal candidate. Sir, I'm honored, but I've only just completed advanced training. I assumed I'd be assigned to a fleet unit. Normally, yes, Strand interjected, but this program has DoD priority. If you're interested, you'd be assigned to the testing center for a 2-year rotation, working directly with engineers on next-generation sniper systems. The experience would be invaluable for your career development. Raina considered the opportunity, weighing the chance to contribute to weapons development against her original goal of operational service. What kind of systems are we discussing, sir? Can't get into specifics in an open setting, Holloway replied, but I can tell you they're pushing past 3,000 meters with unprecedented accuracy. We need someone who understands both the technical aspects and the practical application. Someone who can shoot at that level and articulate what works and what doesn't. How long do I have to decide, sir? Take the weekend, Strand said. But understand this opportunity doesn't come along often. You've demonstrated rare capability, Corporal. The Navy wants to develop that capability fully. Before Reyna could respond, Chin approached with Jade, both carrying their graduation certificates. Corporal, Chun said, his voice carrying gratitude she hadn't expected. I wanted to thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me when I was struggling, for teaching me instead of just tolerating me as a burden. You made me better, and that's what good leaders do. You made yourself better, Reyna replied. I just provided some guidance. Your improvement came from your own dedication. Still, Chin insisted. I wouldn't have made it through without you. Neither would a lot of us. He glanced at several other trainees who'd gathered nearby. We all learned something from watching how you handled the pressure and the skepticism. Jade smiled. You showed us that you can have elite skills without elite arrogance. That you could be exceptional and still humble. That's rare, especially in communities like this. The informal gathering grew as more graduates joined, sharing stories from the week's training and discussing future assignments. Even Teague eventually approached, his usual swagger subdued. Ashford, he said, his tone more respectful than she'd ever heard from him. I owe you an apology. I let my pride and my assumptions about you cloud my judgment. What you did yesterday, and how you've conducted yourself all week, proved me wrong about pretty much everything. Apology accepted, Reyna said simply. We all came here to learn. Pride and assumptions are obstacles for everyone. Teague nodded, seeming to appreciate the diplomatic response. For what it's worth, if I'm ever in a situation where I need someone making an impossible shot, I hope you're the one behind the rifle. He extended his hand, and she shook it, the gesture carrying weight beyond the simple physical contact. As the afternoon wore on, Cress found Reyna alone for a moment near the range overlook. The view stretched across the training areas where she'd spent the past week proving herself shot by shot. He stood beside her, quiet for a long moment before speaking. I've been teaching marksmanship for 15 years, he said finally. Thousands of students through my courses. SEALs, Rangers, Marine Scout snipers, every elite unit the military has. You're in the top 5 I've ever trained, maybe top 3. Sir, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, Cress replied. Just understand what you have. That level of skill is rare, and paired with your attitude and work ethic, it's exceptional. Whatever path you choose, whether it's operational service or the testing program Holloway mentioned, you're going to make a significant impact. I just want to serve, Reyna said, to use these skills for something that matters. Then you're already succeeding, Cress said. Yesterday proved that. He turned to face her directly. I made wrong assumptions about you when you arrived. Saw the expensive equipment and the competition background, and assumed you were privileged and inexperienced. I was wrong, and my bias almost prevented me from recognizing genuine excellence. That's on me, and I learned from it. Thank you for saying that, Master Guns. It means a lot. That evening, as the sun set over the Pacific, Reyna sat alone on the bluffs overlooking the ocean. Her Barrett case rested beside her, the rifle that had been both burden and proof throughout the week. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from a Vermont shooting range to international competition to this moment, her skills validated in the most profound way possible. Her phone buzzed with a message from her parents. They'd heard about the rescue, news having traveled through Navy channels to family notifications. Her mother's message was simple, but carried profound meaning. We're proud of you. Not for the shot, though that was incredible. For staying true to who you were even when people doubted. That's the real victory. Reyna smiled, pocketing the phone. The specialized testing program was tempting, a chance to shape future capabilities. But her heart pulled toward operational service, toward using her skills where they'd matter most. She had the weekend to decide, but she already knew what her choice would be. Below on the range, new trainees were arriving for the next course cycle. They looked nervous and eager, carrying their gear and their hopes and their own stories of how they'd arrived at this place. Somewhere among them might be the next person who'd face an impossible shot with someone's life in the balance. And because of the system she might help develop, because of the standards she'd helped establish, they'd be better prepared. If this story moved you, drop a comment about your favorite moment, or share if you've ever witnessed someone prove their worth after being underestimated. Stories of quiet competence and earned respect matter, and your experiences might inspire others facing similar challenges. The ocean waves crashed against the rocks below, constant and eternal. Reyna stood, shouldering her rifle case, and walked back toward the base. Tomorrow would bring new decisions and new challenges. But tonight, she carried the knowledge that when the moment had mattered most, she'd been ready. Not because of her equipment, though it had helped. Not because of her background, though it had prepared her. But because she'd put in the work, accepted the doubt, and delivered when it counted. The base lights flickered on as darkness fell, illuminating the paths that led forward into whatever came next. Reyna walked toward them with quiet confidence, knowing that whatever challenges waited, she'd face them the same way she'd faced this past week, with dedication, humility, and the unshakable certainty that came from thousands of hours of preparation meeting their moment of truth.